For decades, cryptozoologists around the world have studied the Yeti from what they believed was a safe distance. They were certain that the creature only existed on the faraway mountain peaks of the Tibetan Himalayas or the Russian Urals. But recent eyewitness reports suggest the Yeti population may be larger and more widespread than previously believed. April 2019. While conducting research on Yeti sightings, investigative journalist Aaron Ryder comes across something unexpected on the internet. In 2012, author Brian David Wallenstein published an account of a Yeti encounter he had in 1987. Not in Tibet or Russia, but on Mount Shasta in Northern California.
There's a lot of mystery surrounding this case. Bigfoot encounters in America are fairly common, but a Yeti sighting is extremely rare.
Because a Yeti sighting in North America has never been reported before, Aaron has decided to reach out to Dr. Igor Burtsev, director of the Institute of Hominology in Moscow. He is also one of the foremost experts on the monster.
Igor, thank you so much for talking with me today. I wanted to introduce Nuda, who is my translator, and she'll be helping me talk to you about the Yeti. I'm so excited to hear. I'm fascinated by your research. What's your personal theory on what the Yeti is?
Вот ваше личное мнение насчет снежного человека. Как вы думаете, кто или что он есть?
54 years I studied this question. For 54 years, we understand that this is not just human, adjacent human, but even divine. Forest, what is? Как это божество, лесное божество.
Да, лесной. It's the god of the forest, god of the forest that has a divine power.
Are you seeing an increase in Yeti sightings and videos captured in Russia? And if so, why?
They are more active in all over the world. Every day I receive new information about the encounters. Physically, their activity is much more than before. It can be because some very great event coming for all the globe. The weather is changing.
The climate.
Yes, and these creatures are connected with these things. They want to help us humans to survive, to keep the globe, to keep the earth, to keep the nature.
And they're the protectors and the keepers.
Not occasional.
Igor, I'm going to interview a man who says that he's seen the Yeti in North America on Mount Shasta. Do you believe that the Yeti lives in North America?
Yes, I'm sure so. It's not only in Russia, it is in European countries, in Canada, in the United States.
Wow.
By the way, Mount Shasta, it is a Russian word, Shasta. Shasta means happiness. It was historically in the 19th century, the Russians were there, and they called this Mount Shasta.
Right. It's been so great getting to talk to you, Igor. You have such a wealth of knowledge on the subject. I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you.
Доброй ночи вам. Огромное спасибо за все. До свидания.
До свидания.
While Dr. Burtsev believes the Yeti exists in North America, Aaron wants to hear from the eyewitness himself. To this end, she arranges to meet with Brian David Wallenstein at Mount Shasta, near the place of his reported sighting.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for meeting me.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thanks. So, I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your encounter that I read so much about in your book.
Okay. You're talking about the Yeti experience on the mountain. Okay. It was Thanksgiving of 1987, and My wife-to-be and 3 of our friends decided to take a trip up the mountain after Thanksgiving dinner. We drove up to the old ski park, which got wrecked by an avalanche. And we parked and went up to where the old ski lodge was. As we were approaching the lodge, all of us started smelling something really musky. And the closer we got, the more pronounced the smell got. It was really spooky. And the door of the lodge opened, and we stopped. And out of that door came 3 Yetis. The male was 7 feet tall because his head was level with the top of the door. And after he came out, a female walked out, and she was about 8 or 9 inches shorter. And then a child walked out, and that child was really scared, holding on to her. And the maternal instinct, the protectiveness towards her child was just frightening. And so we walked backwards, and they watched us get back in our car and leave. It was just very frightening.
Well, I'd love for you to show me on the map where your sighting took place, if you could.
Right there.
Got it. So you follow the road up through Panther Meadow, but it's by the gate.
Right.
Well, I think everything you've said has been incredible. I'd love to get up there. Thank you so much for meeting me.
Sure, you bet.
It's one thing to take an eyewitness at their word. It's another to get boots on the ground and actually be where the sighting took place, to get my own eyes on it and to assess the situation myself.
When Erin reaches the site where Brian had his Yeti encounter, what will she find? Possible evidence that a deadly monster from the other side of the world could be lurking somewhere, very close to home? Ever since Chupacabra were first sighted in 1995, cryptozoologists and researchers have proposed a wide range of theories in order to explain their existence. Some suggest they are some type of mutant coyote. Others say they are blood-sucking vampire dogs. And there are even those who believe they are the result of a military experiment gone horribly wrong. But could the most outrageous theory also be the most credible? Could Chupacabra be some type of extraterrestrial creature?
2, 1, ignition.
Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Liftoff.
January 31st, 1961. An MR2 rocket is launched to a height of 130 miles, 68 miles beyond Earth's atmosphere. Traveling aboard is an astronaut named Ham. He is the first chimpanzee in space, and one of more than a dozen animals, including dogs, that will leave Earth's atmosphere before humans do.
In August 1960, the Soviet Union launched a rocket into space which had 2 dogs on board, Belka and Strelka. And those 2 dogs were the first dogs to go into orbit and come back safely. Now, one of the intriguing angles, if you like, is that perhaps extraterrestrials were launching creatures into our atmosphere and coming down on our planet. And whereas we were using dogs, maybe the aliens were using what we call the Chupacabra. If these Chupacabra were in orbit, crashed in Puerto Rico, escaped from their craft, then you can easily see how that phenomenon could have begun and spiraled to where we are now.
There's precedent for animals being put into space. We did it. The Soviets put animals into space as a test, as an experiment to see if it would be safe for us. Why wouldn't aliens do the same thing in running tests of their own space travel ability, put their own lab animals or test animals into a spacecraft and launch it? And if that craft lands on our planet, here we have alien test subjects, alien lab animals roaming around our planet. An alien animal, a test animal, drinking blood, maybe that's just what they need to live. That's the only substance they're able to find on our planet that sustains them.
We're talking about situations similar to the 1987 movie Predator, where you have this strange creature sort of roaming around the rainforests and picking off these people one by one. You have released extraterrestrial animals roaming around the island.
Is it possible that an alien civilization, once similar to our own, also launched its animals into space? And if so, could some of them have accidentally crash-landed here on Earth? Why not? Especially when considering that Puerto Rico is home to the Arecibo Observatory, which houses the world's largest radio telescope. And that at this site, on November 16, 1974, early pioneers of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, sent a transmission out into the cosmos. The coded signal consisted of binary digits, zeros and ones, that form a message designed to notify other potentially advanced beings of our existence. Could this have attracted extraterrestrials to this very location?
There have been a lot of sightings of UFOs around the Arecibo Magnetic Telescope, which has long been trying to observe extraterrestrial phenomena.
But could this mean that Chupacabra didn't come to Earth by accident, but on purpose? And if so, were they sent in a gesture of friendship? Or were they sent here to feed on humans?
What if what makes a chupacabra is not its physical characteristics, but a virus or a disease that makes a creature behave this way? Perhaps it's similar to rabies.
So there are many mammals that can contract rabies, and none of these animals look anything alike. But what makes them similar is the behavior once they've contracted the disease. They are irritable, they foam at the mouth, they attack at will. So this could be something that, some sort of virus that causes these two separate animals to behave the same way. So imagine a rabies-like virus, only much worse and much more terrifying.
A disease? Like rabies? Could that mean that it is capable of spreading, mutating, and like a disease, will become increasingly resistant to extermination? But if Chupacabra are the result of an extremely potent virus, where did it come from? Is it possible that it is connected to reports of UFO sightings in Puerto Rico and elsewhere? And could this explain why there are differences in Chupacabra's appearance from one location to another?
If there are alien animals here whose method of sustenance is to drink the blood of our livestock, if they have something that they can pass on, something that's like a contagion to animals here, to a coyote or to a dog, that can then give that animal the need or the desire to drink the blood of livestock as well, that could be how we see the transformation of the more alien-like Puerto Rican chupacabra into the form we see in Texas. We think of zombies as a contagious disease. We think of vampires as a contagious disease. We think of werewolves as a contagious disease. It would only make sense that we would add that same idea into the chupacabra and say this is a creature that makes more chupacabras by biting other animals.
In the 2 decades since its first documented sighting, instances of Chupacabra attacks have become more and more frequent. Like a mutating disease, it grows stronger in both viciousness and cunning. It also continues to change its physical appearance and its appetite. According to reports, a Chupacabra killed its first human victim in 2019. If Chupacabra are the first wave of an alien invasion, is it only a matter of time before this 4-legged infection spreads across every part of the globe? What then? Will we be powerless to stop them? Marguerite Brick Conservation Area, Rolla, Missouri, July 27, 2018. Terry Shrout and Dean Grain are out hiking the full moon trail after dark. Suddenly, they realize they are not alone.
I looked over and saw a giant black silhouette. When I first looked, it was low to the ground, and I saw it raise up. I froze completely. I was scared because I didn't know what it was.
This thing was huge.
It was probably at least 6 feet tall. It looked very much like a bear, but it moved more like a cat. It was graceful. It didn't make a lot of noise.
It leaped up the ridge line at least 15 to 20 feet before it hit the ground and took off. We didn't see it anymore.
Yeah.
We could hear the footfalls just a few steps through the leaves.
It was like it just disappeared almost.
I was floored at what it was. I mean, there's no one seeing something like this, and once you see it, there's no denying it.
What Terry and Dean believed they encountered on that terrifying night is the monster known as the Ozark Howler, a large predatory cat that, according to eyewitness accounts, is more fearsome than anything known to man.
It was March of 2008. I was headed home from work. As I was coming down the road, there was a big, looked like a ball of black fur, and I slammed on my brakes. It resembled the way a cat would haunch down on its hind legs with its front legs straight. It stood up. It was huge. It was the size of a bear, but it had longer fur, and it had a long tail, which bears don't have. And it just darted across the road. I was really scared. For quite a while, I wouldn't go outside afterwards. Even today, I still get goosebumps. It was terrifying.
The most common description is that it's like a very, very large, stocky cat. Usually described as having a tail, very shaggy fur, but this is not a lithe and lean animal. This is built powerfully. It's a real mix of known creatures into this unknown creature.
While descriptions of the monster's size and shape remain constant, accounts about some of its other features vary widely. Some eyewitnesses have even reported seeing what appeared to be horns coming out of the creature's head.
One of the most interesting features that eyewitnesses describe, beyond it being a large muscular cat, are these horns, these curled large horns, not unlike what you'd see on a ram. This is very interesting because there is no known species of cat that has horns.
There is a thing called a cutaneous horn that is found most commonly in humans. It's a form of keratosis, but it can develop in animals alike. So when we see a cat in the wild that is depicted to have had horns, that could be a version of the cutaneous horn due to a mutation from genetics and/or a mutation from the radiation from the sun.
In addition to horns, the Ozark Howler is also said to have razor-sharp claws and teeth, as well as two other, even more unsettling characteristics: its strangely reflective red eyes.
Certainly one of the standout aspects of the Ozark Howler is its eyes. People talk about them being sort of fiery and blazing red or very intense yellow, and which really, for the witnesses, for the victims, you might call them, that terrifies them.
The reflective eyes would indicate an animal that's nocturnal, something whose eyes have adapted to the dark of the night. And that would be a fair explanation as to why this thing isn't seen too often. Moreover, it's said to be a very elusive predator, something that's often seen slinking along the edge of the forest, and often attributed to attacking livestock and generally terrorizing people.
But perhaps the most unique aspect of the monster is its most defining feature: the horrific howl from which the Ozark Howler gets its name.
The reason why I think it terrifies people so much is because of the distinct howling that really puts chills through people.
This is an animal that people become aware of because it's making a noise that people can't place as an existing creature. So the sound has been described as somewhere between a wolf's howl and an elk bugle. Sometimes it's described as sounding like a human scream or a hyena's laugh, and that's really the distinguishing characteristic of this creature.
Animal experts say we can learn a lot about a creature by the sounds that it makes.
Communication vocally for cats is important. Cougars make quite a loud scream. That screaming and screeching, you know, they're looking for a mate to come in for breeding. That's typically a female in heat, and they're out at night. You know, they're nocturnal animals. That would be a little frightening if you were out on a hike through the woods.
There's this viral video of two lynxes howling at each other. It sounds like what people are describing when they talk about how the Ozark Howler sounds.
But why is a creature as large and loud as the Ozark Howler reported to be so hard to find? Perhaps the answer lies in the terrain it's said to inhabit. The Ozarks are so vast, they spread across 4 states: Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and southeastern Kansas.
The Ozark Mountains are 50,000 square miles of some of the densest forest in America, and we're trying to find a large black cat in that. Good luck.
Over 8 million visitors a year come to the Ozarks to experience the area's many beautiful lakes and rivers. Many of them could have crossed paths with the Ozark Howler and never known it.
You can walk through the Ozarks, and if some animal doesn't want you to see it, you're not going to find it. It's going to find you.
Just what is this terrifying big cat beast? Could it be some kind of genetic mutant? Is it a deadly predator? Or is the Ozark Howler a creature not only from another place, but from another time? Gaspésie, Quebec, July 29th, 2018. Along a remote stretch of highway, Audrey Tanguay-Frechette, a French-Canadian healthcare worker, is taking a drive with his family when he sees a moose standing by the side of the road. He pulls over to videotape it.
Oh man, it's very cool.
Oh wow. Only to notice something very strange entering the frame. It appears to be stalking the moose from the nearby woods.
You have this moose just wandering around, and in the background by the trees, you have this weird sort of whitish kind of animal that is lurking in the background, clearly sort of eyeing the moose. This humanoid creature sort of moves in really weird, jerky movements. I find it pretty eye-opening as to what it is, or what it isn't.
When the video is posted on the internet, it causes a sensation. More than 1 million viewers are baffled as to the identity of the mysterious creature crouching in the shadows.
As I kept on watching it over and over again, it seems like to be some kind of creature that fits the example of a Wendigo that was about to jump on this moose.
The Wendigo? The mythical wraith-like creature that Native Americans of the northeastern United States have described as ravenous, bloodthirsty, and capable of possessing the souls of its victims? Does the possibility that such a creature was caught on tape offer proof that it actually exists? For those who claim to have encountered the Wendigo in person, no such proof is even necessary. Trego, Wisconsin, January 2014, 1 a.m. Bartender Laura Ritchie is driving home from work on River Road. As she turns a corner through a wooded area, she comes face to face with a monster.
It came from the lakeside, kind of emerged from the woods, and it stopped as it saw me cresting the corner, and I got a good look at its face. When I first saw the creature, I was shocked. I didn't really know what it was. It was very tall, about 10 feet tall. Its arms were very long, almost to the point that they dragged on the ground when it walked. The head was shaped kind of like an almond shape or like an upside-down teardrop, and it had very, very, very large eyes, like too big for its face. And I remembered that they did glow when my headlights shone on them, and it was kind of like an orangish glow.
Laura Ritchie had no idea what the wraith-like creature was or how dangerous it could be until she began telling friends about what she saw.
I assumed it may be some kind of alien thing, it may be some kind of apparition, it could be a Sasquatch, I have no idea. And then I kind of got to thinking about some legends around here about the Wendigo, and this is like, that is definitely what I saw. Description matched perfectly.
The Wendigo is probably the most dangerous and hostile and malevolent cryptid that is out there.
Stories about the Wendigo have been told for centuries. Accounts of the beast describe a humanoid-type creature, standing anywhere from 6 to 16 feet tall, with gray or sometimes white skin, giant glowing eyes, and razor-sharp rotting teeth. It is also said to have a bald, skull-like head, although some eyewitnesses have described the creature as having antlers. But there is one physical trait about which there is no contradiction. The Wendigo is gaunt, almost skeletal, and with an exposed ribcage.
They're bony, they're skeletons, the skin is falling off. You know, they're emaciated, basically. In a lot of the sacred stories, you can see their internal organs.
If there's one unifying characteristic in how this creature looks, it's that it looks hungry. That's how it's defined. It's a hungry creature.
Far scarier than the Wendigo's hungry appearance is what it reportedly does to satisfy its hunger.
They prey on people. And when I say they prey on them, I mean they literally feed on people.
The only type of food that they want is human flesh. Human flesh, bones, and blood. That's what they crave. And so when they eat human flesh, they grow. And when they grow, they get hungrier and hungrier. They're never satiated. They're never satisfied.
Some say it's missing its own mouth and lips because its insatiable hunger for human flesh has caused it to chew off its own face.
Although stories of the Wendigo date back to the ancient oral histories of Native American tribes, its growing number of viral appearances on the internet have thrust the Wendigo into the cryptozoological spotlight.
Over the last 2 decades, interest in the Wendigo has exploded. It's really become mainstream. And I think because it's so unique and so terrifying that something about it resonates with us like it did 400 years ago.
It's interesting to note that the Wendigo has also entered pop culture. For example, it's appeared in movies, in games, and even in the field of novels.
Although the Wendigo's hunting grounds are believed to be the Great Lakes region of North America, a recent rash of sightings has suggested that not only is there more than one of them out there, they are spreading rapidly, not only on land, but in water.
The Wendigo is a being that came from water. We do water ceremonies to appease the spirits of the water. That's where he came from. Maybe that's where he lives.
There's a place in Minnesota called Wendigo Lake, and the legend is that anyone walking around the banks of the lake, the Wendigo, which is thought to reside in the lake, will snatch you off the banks, pull you under, and you'll meet your watery grave. and spend eternity in that lake with the Wendigo.
In September 2006, paranormal researcher Christy Rogers traveled to Rice Lake, Wisconsin, along with an investigation team. Because the lake area is considered a hotspot for Wendigo sightings, Christy was hoping to recover solid evidence that such a creature really exists there. What she and her team found was much more than they bargained for.
We went out on the lake in a canoe just because we had claims of the Wendigo being sighted on that lake. While we were out there, all of a sudden from behind the canoe, something pushed us up. My cousin who was in the canoe with me went face forward in the water, and I went up in the air and came down into the water. As I went underneath, there was something that was wrapping around my legs, holding me down and pulling me down underneath even further. It was the most terrifying moment I've ever had. And then all of a sudden, I was free from whatever was holding me down. And as I got to shore, I looked down at my legs, and you could see red marks, like fingernails all over the bottoms of my legs. I strongly believe it was a Wendigo. I knew from experience and just research alone that it definitely did not want us there.
Christy Rogers was lucky. She had been attacked by a Wendigo and survived. January 2014. Architect Sanjay Singhal is driving through the small town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. He turns onto Bray Road.
It was somewhat late in the afternoon, about 4:30, and so starting to get dark, but not quite. And as I was heading up Bray Road, the road was a little bit icy, so I wasn't going very fast, maybe 30 or 35 miles per hour.
Suddenly, Sanjay is startled by something he sees out the window.
I saw what I thought was a dog running in the field, sort of parallel to the car, and then I suddenly realized it wasn't a dog. It was a very large wolf-like creature. I do remember very large teeth.
What was already a disturbing experience has started to become terrifying.
It looked me right in the eyes, as if to say, yes, I am real, and no, I don't like you. The look that it gave me was intelligent, that it had approached me intentionally, that it was showing itself to me for a reason.
It wasn't until he returned home later that evening that Sanjay realized that the creature he had encountered was none other than the Beast of Bray Road, a large, fearsome wolf-like creature that gets its name from the long, desolate stretch of road where he is frequently spotted.
I'd heard a lot of stories about Bray Road. A lot of people in this area talk about it. Everybody knows at least someone who has seen it or encountered it. It never occurred to me that I would actually encounter it myself.
Although the beast is thought of as a regionally based creature, it has drawn a great deal of national attention. In 1993, Inside Edition aired a report on the beast. In 2009, Fox News' Sean Hannity devoted a segment to exploring the mystery. In June 2018, Milwaukee's WTMJ featured a story about a controversial photo that one man claimed was of the monster itself. But, in spite of its current fame, the Beast of Bray Road didn't always enjoy such widespread notoriety. That didn't happen until 1991, when area reporter and cartoonist Linda Godfrey began working for a local newspaper, the Walworth County Week.
I had started as a cartoonist, and just through a happy accident happened to be there when another reporter quit and was offered the job on the spot. I took it, and the next thing I knew, people were telling me that they were seeing some sort of creature. They'd say, if there was such a thing as a werewolf, this would be it. And I remember laughing. You know, I thought it was ridiculous.
At first, Linda regarded the stories of a so-called wolfman as nothing more than a harmless folktale. a hoax that grew to become part of Elkhorn's local lore. Through her contacts around town, Linda learned the names of those who encountered the strange creature and persuaded them to tell their stories.
When I began to go around and talk to these people, I realized everybody who reported this thing to me reported the same thing. In fact, I was very much struck by how similar they were. They all described something that was 5 to 7 feet tall. They said it had the head of either a wolf or a German shepherd with a long snout, lots of fangs, long, shaggy, dark fur. And most interesting was that it walked upright, but its legs were bent backwards. Very often, people would tell me it would look them in the eyes, and they would have sort of a momentary stare down. And that was the scariest thing of all to them. One of the most dramatic episodes happened to a young single mother. She was driving home late at night, and she was the one who saw it, kneeling and holding this roadkill up to its mouth, and it sort of snarled at her. She said she felt right then that it was demonic, that it was evil.
The gruesome encounter inspired Linda to sketch the monster for a future article on the beast.
When I made that sketch that I call the kneeling roadkill sketch, I had numerous reports of it sitting by the side of the road on its haunches, almost like a human would do, nearly kneeling and holding its food, which looked like a big dead raccoon or something, up in its palms, which is not the way a dog eats, or a canine of any sort.
Located 40 miles southwest of Milwaukee, Elkhorn, Wisconsin is an unlikely backdrop for a monster story. Its total population is just over 10,000, and its Norman Rockwell-type charm has earned it the nickname Christmas Card Town. The wide open farmland, along with the flat landscape, offers a sharp contrast to the densely forested environments favored by other cryptids. That means there are few places for a monster to hide, but also that potential victims are equally vulnerable.
Most cryptids that we know of are found in remote forests or deep lakes. This one is in this tiny little city, a flat land with not much cover.
As she continued to research her story, Linda began to notice that the sightings tended to follow a consistent pattern, and they usually happened somewhere in the vicinity of Bray Road.
It's about 3 to 4 miles long, and it's actually a shortcut between a highway and a back road that leads to the county hospital. So it's not like it's isolated or anything, but yet this seems to be the locus of so many of the sightings that came through in the beginning.
In the early 2000s, I did my own stakeout of Bray Road, and I was struck by the kind of serene pastoral setting. Doesn't seem like the ideal home for a werewolf-type monster.
While conducting an interview with an animal control officer about disturbing reports of animal mutilations in the area, Linda realized that she might not be alone in thinking the strange stories she was being told about a giant hairy beast could actually be true.
We were chatting, and I said, by the way, have you heard anything about this creature people are seeing out on Bray Road? And he said, oh, you mean this? And he reaches down, he pulls out a manila file folder, and the tab on the file folder said, werewolf. So here's a county control officer with a manila file folder marked werewolf.
The idea that a government official would have a folder labeled werewolf, an official folder, certainly tells me that there's something strange going on in this area.
The local police department was also receiving anxious reports of a strange wolfman prowling the backroads of Elkhorn.
It gives the whole thing a little more credence because these people called the police. They saw something and they immediately notified authorities.
As the first ever article on Elkhorn's resident monster was about to go to press, there was just one problem. It didn't have a name, so Linda Godfrey gave it one.
People didn't know what it was. They would say something like, well, it looked just like a werewolf would look, but they didn't know if it was a werewolf. I actually did not think that it was a traditional werewolf either. And I thought, well, a good word would be beast, because a beast can mean any kind of animal from a mouse to an elephant to a dinosaur. You know, it doesn't have a set meaning. And I realized that it had a nice cadence with the Beast of Bray Road. And so that was what I used for the title, and it stuck.
On December 29th, 1991, the Walworth County Week ran the first story ever published about the Beast of Bray Road. It caused a sensation. Finally, the local community had found validation in their belief that a giant hairy monster lurked in their midst.
When Linda started writing about the Beast of Bray Road, that's when things kind of took off. We had a hometown monster.
News of the Beast of Bray Road spread like wildfire, and cryptozoologists were eager to find out everything they could in their determination to study this newly minted menace.
People have described it as being both upright and walking bipedally and also going down on all fours. And moreover, this thing has a very aggressive nature.
Linda Godfrey's article ignited a blaze of interest in this strange and still largely unexplored creature. But what is it? Where did it come from? And, perhaps more importantly, what does it want? These are the questions that a growing legion of researchers and investigators are determined to answer before the creature that lurks in the shadows turns from killing animals to human prey. In December of 1968, scientists Dr. Bernard Heuvelmans and Ivan T. Sanderson became convinced that they had discovered an incredible new species of primate, and possibly even a direct human ancestor encased in a block of ice. Before Frank Hansen granted the scientists permission to examine the Iceman, he made both promise not to reveal their findings to anyone.
Of course, what they do is they both immediately turn around and publish papers about this, which also makes sense from their perspective. This is an astonishing discovery that they have made. Sanderson goes on The Tonight Show, and he says someone has found the missing link in Minnesota. And in 1968, that's as close to going viral as you can get. This is spreading the word, and suddenly all attention is focused on Hansen.
For a man who made a living charging admission to see the monster at carnivals, Hansen quickly became anxious that word was getting out that his star attraction might be the real thing.
Part of the problem with the Minnesota Iceman, is it indeed a human creature or is it an animal? If this thing was killed illegally in Vietnam and illegally transported back, Frank Hansen's broken several laws. There's a lot of illegality with the Minnesota Iceman. There was a lot of pressure from investigations from the FBI and the local law enforcement. They wanted to actually seize the body and examine it. And he was told, they're coming to get you. And so, in an overnight switch, he took his tractor trailer and took off, disappeared, and came back with the replica.
In 1969, Frank Hansen announced that he would no longer exhibit the biological Iceman specimen, but would instead show a latex replica. In a July 1970 Saga magazine article, Hansen wrote that he hired Hollywood prop maker Howard Ball to craft the replica from Hansen's drawings and sketches of the real specimen. The replica was exhibited openly as a fake for decades afterwards, leaving everyone wondering, why did Hansen make the switch? And what happened to the real Iceman?
Some people believe Hansen himself actually buried the body, basically just to avoid being court-martialed and getting in trouble with the law for using military equipment and his connections to smuggle the body in from Asia.
Frank Hansen died in 2003, taking the truth about the Iceman to his grave. Was the original Iceman a flesh and blood creature, an anthropological throwback that was shot somewhere in the jungles of Vietnam? Or was it always a fake, a Carney Barker's hoax?
It's my opinion that Frank Hansen had a latex model all along. He had an excellent story, but at the end of the day, he was traveling around with some sort of gaff or dummy.
Skeptics even have an answer for the pungent odor of rotting flesh Heuvelmans and Sanderson detected when they accidentally broke the display's glass.
I am actually an artist by trade, and I work a lot with latex, and I can tell you, when you let it sit around in water, it begins to smell pretty funky, so it's possible that that's actually what they smelled in that instance.
But if the original Iceman put on display by Frank Hansen back in 1968 was always a latex dummy, why did he so publicly announce he was making a switch? Is it possible that both of the specimens were in fact one and the same? But Hansen claimed he had faked it in order to stop further investigation. Eager to find the answer, Texas-based comic book writer and graphic designer Steve Boosty spent years tracking down Hansen's alleged replica until it suddenly turned up on eBay in 2013 with an asking price of $20,000.
I spent about 8 years trying to track this thing down. This was my dream to find it. I got to buy it, and I immediately purchased it.
Today, the Iceman replica resides in its original freezer at Steve Boosty's Museum of the Weird in Austin, Texas. And it is to this destination that cryptozoologist Ken Gerhardt has come in an effort to solve the Iceman mystery.
One of the central mysteries surrounding the Minnesota Iceman is whether in fact there were two versions of the Iceman, a latex model and something else, something that may have been flesh and blood. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Ken. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me out here today.
Of course. I'm really interested to see what you have.
Yeah, so check it out. I've obtained some rare prints of Bernard Heuvelmans' original photographs taken in December of 1968. So my thought process is, by comparing these photographs to the exhibit you have here, maybe we can make a final determination whether in fact it was the same Iceman all along, or if in fact there was a switch made at some point. What do you think?
If this is any way to bring an end to the mystery once and for all, I'm all for it. So let's do it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I feel like history is repeating itself. More than 50 years ago, Frank Hansen invited Ivan Sanderson and Bernard Heuvelmans to his ranch to inspect the Iceman up close. And today, I'm having Ken Gerhardt come and do the same thing.
One of the issues I'm having is visibility is very poor here, very challenging.
I do have a way I think we can clear it up for you. We're gonna have to take the glass off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with that, let's do it.
All right.
I was pretty blown away Steve was willing to remove the glass layer on top of the Minnesota Iceman. I think that was important because it gave us a really good opportunity to view, examine, and measure the Minnesota Iceman in ways that had never been done before.
I've got a pitcher of water. We're gonna pour it over this and it should clear it up instantly, like magic. You ready?
Let's go. Whoa!
Like magic, right?
Wow.
Although Ken and Steve had considered melting the ice and examining the latex dummy, they decided instead to conduct a direct comparison between the ice-covered figure in the freezer and the photographs taken by Bernard Heuvelmans in 1968.
I gotta tell you, Steve, every time I see this thing, it's chilling, and not for the obvious reasons.
Right.
Was the Minnesota Iceman always a fake, as some researchers claim? Or will Ken and Steve find proof that not only were photos taken in 1968 those of an entirely different specimen, but that they depicted a real, cryogenically preserved monster? For centuries, a giant sea creature, known as the Loch Ness Monster, has been believed to dwell deep within the cold, dark waters of Scotland's Loch Ness. But could such a fantastic notion really be true? According to one high-ranking Scottish official, it is. On June 8, 2018, Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's first minister and leader of the Scottish National Party, openly asserted her belief that not only is the Loch Ness Monster real, but that the creature affectionately known as Nessie is deserving of national respect.
The Loch Ness Monster does exist, and I'm not going to concede ground on this morning. As everybody in Scotland knows, of course, Nessie exists. So, you know, I think you're treading in some very dangerous waters here, if you don't mind me saying. I mean, you can patronise me, you can patronise the SNP, you can patronise Scotland. You've probably tried most of that this morning, but patronising Nessie, I think that's pretty dodgy.
Although Nicola Sturgeon's comments ignited a firestorm of criticism from all sides of the political spectrum, she is by no means alone in her belief that the Loch Ness Monster is real. But if so, what kind of creature is it? Is it benign or dangerous? And perhaps the most important question of all, is it alone?
Descriptions of the Loch Ness Monster are very interesting because there are two main types. They are completely conflicting, and yet they coexist. One is the multi-humped sea serpent, so lots of humps, serpentine head and neck. The other is the stumpy-bodied, four-flippered, long-necked plesiosaur.
The Loch Ness Monster is described as a truly massive aquatic animal, ranging anywhere from 20 to 30 feet long. People describe the skin as being very smooth, like a whale. The color is typically described as being very dark, either gray, black, or darkish green. The Loch Ness Monster is either a plesiosaur, or some people say it could be a giant eel or an ancient type of whale called a zeuglodon. All of those animals are carnivorous. So presumably the Loch Ness Monster is a predator, and so I think it could be a very scary situation.
My biggest fear is that I would find myself in the water with the beast. I could see myself being crushed to death under its massive weight or ripped to shreds by its razor-sharp teeth.
But whether stumpy or long-necked, smooth or covered in scales, one thing is certain: the Loch Ness Monster is big business.
The Loch Ness Monster is an enormous business. It attracts over 1 million visitors and it generates about £41 million sterling to the local economy here.
I mean, if they've got monsters in their midst, why not make coffee and tea mugs? Why not make T-shirts with a picture of Nessie on the front?
It is a rare person who does not associate Scotland right off the bat with the Loch Ness Monster in some way. And the commercialization of this creature has been an incredible boon to this country. People want to engage with this legend. They want to bring home a souvenir.
Although the so-called Nessies in the Loch Ness gift shops may seem cute and cuddly, a face-to-face encounter with the real monster would probably be a whole different story. While there is no hard evidence that the giant creature is particularly hostile or even aggressive toward its human neighbors, there was one famous incident in 1952 that might suggest otherwise.
Back in the 1950s, there was a gentleman named John Cobb who was attempting to break the world land speed record in a boat. And he was shooting across the placid surface of Loch Ness in this hyped-up boat, and suddenly his boat struck an object. And the boat disintegrated and he died.
The object John Cobb's boat hit was later dismissed as an unexplained wake in the water. But many who examined the video found no evidence of a wake and wondered if something else had caused the fatal accident.
There are many people that feel that the Loch Ness Monster was responsible for that.
But if an enormous and potentially deadly sea monster is alive and swimming in the waters of Loch Ness, why has nobody been able to capture it? Outside of taking a few photographs. Experts will tell you that the answer is somewhat obvious. Loch Ness is not only large, it is also very, very deep.
It's roughly 22 miles long, a mile wide, and it's surrounded by these imposing slopes. and covered in trees and surrounded by old decaying castles. It does have also kind of an uncanny feeling when you're there, that you're in some kind of almost like a magical realm where anything could happen.
At depths of up to 755 feet, the Loch Ness holds more water than all the other lakes in the British Isles combined. But it's not just the volume of water that could be concealing a monster in Loch Ness. It's the unique properties of the water itself.
Loch Ness's water is very murky. The surrounding areas all have a high peat content, and so that leaches into the lake, and it makes it almost like a very dark tea color.
It's difficult to film underneath Loch Ness because about 10 feet down, you can't see your hand in front of your face, it's so dark.
Although brave attempts to find Nessie by means of scuba diving, and even submarine, have been unsuccessful, sightings of the beast above water, while infrequent, continue to fuel the mystery.
There are quite a number of sightings reported each year. We get up to between 30 and 40 sightings, and from that, there's maybe between 5 and 15 that are credible.
Sightings of the Loch Ness Monster actually go back more than 1,500 years. The first case we have on record came from a man named Saint Columba, who was actually trying to bring Christianity to Scotland.
According to official Vatican records, Saint Columba witnessed the funeral of a man who was reportedly killed by a water beast. Shortly afterwards, the monk saw what appeared to be the same beast rise up and attack a man swimming in the Ness River. Although this time, he was able to use divine powers to repel the beast. A second reported sighting occurred in the late 1800s, when a local man saw what he thought was a large log or upturned boat moving quickly through the water. But it was in 1933, after a road was built along the loch's southern shore, that the frequency of sightings began to increase.
It was only when the new road was built in '33 that people could go by it. And so inevitably more and more people were visiting Loch Ness and more people were seeing the creatures.
It's from this road that the first modern Loch Ness Monster sighting happened. It was chronicled in the Inverness Courier newspaper on May 2nd, 1933. In an article many say started the modern-day Loch Ness Monster legend. It told the story of a businessman and his wife noticing a tremendous upheaval on the loch. The couple described a creature as rolling and plunging for a minute, its body resembling a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a cauldron. The creature then vanished in a boiling mass of foam.